Hola. I'm trying to channel my inner Venezuelan beauty queen that's somewhere in there. For those of you who follow beauty queen pageants, we've got the most in the world. So, hola, hi, hi up there, hola. I hear it. Where I'm from, usually this is a time of day where those little coffees come out and you get that power surge. I want to make sure everybody's here. ¿Cómo están? Muy bien. Oh my goodness, who are you people? So, a show of hands, how many of you have said or have used the phrase, walk a mile in somebody's shoes? Walk a mile in his shoes, her shoes, right? It's a great phrase that allows us to think of other people, think of their experiences, to empathize, to understand others, right? We're sort of taught this from childhood, how to think about others and what they go through. So the message I want to give you today is, don't just imagine walking in somebody else's shoes. Walk along with them. Walk that mile with them. Because when we do that, we're not just championing diversity and inclusion. We're also championing belonging. And belonging is a key thing that we all want and desire, and it's a good thing for us. So I'm going to tell you a little personal story to illustrate to you how to walk with someone, along with them, not just in their shoes. You ready? Listos? Man, you guys need that cafecito. I'm not sure. So when my father left war-torn Italy in 1955, all his belongings were just the clothes he had on himself. He got onto a ship, a grain ship, as a stowaway, and went Venezuela bound instead of New York bound like the rest of his cousins. He only had one pair of shoes, and it was a pair of shoes that he was wearing on that trip. When he arrived in Venezuela, the first thing that he did to earn a living was to go door to door fixing shoes. That's how he started out. 60 years later, he had multiple very successful businesses, put the 4 of us through college, 2 through MBAs, and 1 through a PhD. In literature, much to the dismay of a family full of scientists and business people. But it was my father Vincenzo's spirit, his resilience, his intrepidness, his generosity that I now understand is in my genes. And I now also understand that that is the same force that drives the students that I have the pleasure of working with through various educational organizations. So I also have the distinct honor of being that professor who doesn't remember your name, but you're like, I loved your class, I remember I got an A, and the professor's like, oh, wonderful. That's me. And the students I want to tell you about today in particular are the young Latinx students. And when you hear the term Latinx, what sort of comes to your mind? I'm asking you, throw it out. When you hear Latinx? Non-gender specific, diversity, embracing our likenesses, our similarities, probably delicious food, like the one we had today at lunch. But it also brings the proverbial seat at the table, right? That's part of how we think of inclusion. Pull up a chair at the table. But what happens when pulling a chair up to the table is not enough? What happens when you're seated at a banquet and you don't know what to do with the silverware? The typical, oh my goodness, what's that third little fork for? What do I do with that? Or something is brought out on a tray and you're like, what is that? You don't know what you're going to eat or how to eat it. Those are the spaces where we can't just imagine walking in somebody's shoes. We have to walk along with them. And that's what I do with my Latinx students. To give you a sense of who they are, I have students who have told me, for example, the story of crossing the desert with his mother to arrive in this country. The heat, the exhaustion, the thirst. And it's very different when you read about this in a report, see it on TV, than when you have somebody sitting next to you who is not of legal age yet, and that is the story that they tell you of where they come from. Or the student who has never visited the country where she was born because it's too dangerous to go there. There are also the amazing Gates Millennial scholars who are intelligent beyond my understanding and who you know will do amazing things in this world. There's a student who is the first one in her family to go through grade school, middle school, high school, and be college-bound. And these are students that it's not enough to imagine walking in their shoes. You must walk along with them. So last year, my father Vincenzo, who I was telling you about, suffered a stroke in Venezuela in the midst of this terrible political, social, and economic crisis that is really tearing the country apart. I immediately bought a ticket to go down, thinking I would go down for a week and a half. And once I was there, I could not leave the country legally. I can't tell you how I left. That would compromise all of you. But I was there for 2 months. And having thought that I would go there for a week and a half, I only took down 2 pairs of shoes. The one I was wearing on the trip down was this gold pair of moccasins, which in hindsight really was a big wardrobe malfunction, considering gold shoes to go to a country that's about to go into civil war, not very smart. But those were the shoes that I had, and those were the shoes that I wore every day as I was in Venezuela taking care of my father. I wore them to go to the clinics, I wore them to go to the banks, the offices, grocery stores, pharmacies, you name it, because now in Venezuela, anywhere you go, you have to stand in line, and you have to be in line for a long time to get anything that you need. By the time I returned, the shoes, as you can see, were pretty beat up. They weren't shiny anymore. The soles were all torn up. The left one had a hole. My thought was, what am I gonna do with these shoes? They stink. But you know, I couldn't throw out those shoes because these were the shoes that I used to walk along with my father on this unexpected journey that we had together. So I kept those shoes. And these shoes have taught me many things about resilience, but also about empathy. At one point, these shoes also taught me to understand better the journeys that my own students have gone through. And to understand that for me, as an educator, I can't just sit in my office and print reports about my students to show how great they're doing, or plan wonderful trips and educational experiences for them. That is not enough. I have to know them, and they have to know me. So my students know me, they know my children, I know their parents, which means many quinceañeras, to the point that you wonder how many more girls are gonna turn 15 this year. Also means amazing family reunions with amazing food. It also means a phone call because the car won't start and it's pouring rain and a student needs to be at that educational committee meeting that we have, because that meeting might be an amazing opportunity for that student to go to college or will open doors for them. And that's where walking with someone comes in, not just imagining what my students go through, but actually being there and walking through them in these journeys. So the hole in my shoe, I'm proud of the hole in my shoe. It has taught me how to walk with people, not just imagine what people are going through. So when my father came up to do his rehab, at the rehab center, they informed him that he needed some sneakers. My father is the gentleman on your right side with a cigarette in his hand. You might imagine this is a picture I used as a teenager and as an adult to remind him that he smoked whenever I was chastised for smoking or drinking. And so, being the very elegant Italian gentleman that he had not owned a pair of sneakers since he actually used to exercise in his 40s. So I took my 2 sons to the store, an actual store, to buy nonno, that's grandfather in Italian, some sneakers. And as I was looking around trying to find the perfect pair of sneakers, the ones that fit him, that would do the right thing, my 7-year-old son just went, "Mommy, here are the sneakers that nonno needs." And lo and behold, they were the perfect pair of shoes for what his grandfather needed. And that 7-year-old, my little 7-year-old, understood that because he had already walked with his grandfather. He hadn't just imagined what his grandfather was going through, but he had walked with him in this journey. And there was the learning. And so the idea of walking with someone is what allows us to think of bringing somebody to the table for the diversity, of including them, but also giving them a sense of belonging. It's what allows us to knit the tapestry of what makes our communities. It's in the walking together that we really understand what our community is about when we gather at the table. And so my message to you is put on your shoes, walk a mile with someone. Don't just imagine what they've been through, what they've walked through. Walk along with them. Make that empathy become your inclusion. Make a person feel like they belong by walking with them. So put on your shoes and walk a mile with someone. ¡Vámonos!